It was supposed to be a quiet night. The kind of night where the station's heater hummed louder than the radio, and the snowstorm outside made you wish you'd never left home. I was the only one left in the office, buried under a mountain of paperwork, trying to ignore the howling wind rattling the windows. My boots were propped up on the desk, my mind already drifting toward the thought of a warm bed, when the radio crackled to life, slicing through the silence. Deputy needed. Suspicious activity reported at Holloway Road. Caller disconnected before providing details. I stiffened. That address was familiar, too familiar. Everybody in town knew about that house. It was a dare for teenagers, a magnet for thrill seekers, and an obsession for amateur ghost hunters. In the summer, you'd see kids sneaking onto the property, hoping to capture something unnatural. It was the site of one of Nebraska's most chilling unsolved mysteries. Back in 1981, the Holloway family, mother, father, 5 kids, vanished without a trace. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, nothing. It was as if they had just gotten up in the middle of the night and walked off the face of the earth. Investigators tore the place apart for weeks, even dredged the pond out back. But there were no bodies, no leads, not even a working theory. Just a quiet house, a half-eaten dinner left on the table, and questions that never found answers. People whispered about it. Some said the parents had done something terrible, and the whole family paid the price. Others claimed the house itself had swallowed them up. I shook off the unease creeping up my spine and grabbed the radio. Deputy Carter responding. On my way, the drive out there was brutal. The storm had turned the roads to ice, and my headlights barely pierced through the thick wall of falling snow. The further I got from town, the more isolated everything became. Houses disappeared, replaced by empty fields and skeletal trees, their branches bending under the weight of the storm. By the time I reached the property, the house was a looming shadow in the blizzard, its frame warped by time and neglect. The roof sagged under years of decay, windows were either shattered or boarded up, and the front porch leaned at an unnatural angle, like the whole thing might collapse if the wind hit it just right. But the front door was open, not wide open, just ajar, swaying slightly in the wind, creaking softly, like something inside had left it that way, waiting. My grip on the wheel tightened until my knuckles went white. I stepped out of the cruiser, immediately hit by a blast of freezing wind sharp enough to steal my breath. Snow crunched under my boots as I made my way forward, flashlight cutting a narrow path through the dark. Then I saw them. Footprints. They led from the road straight to the front door. Deep impressions, too big for a child, too uneven for someone simply walking. Whoever made them had been dragging something. My stomach twisted. I exhaled, breath curling in the frigid air. Sheriff's Department. My voice was steady, but the wind snatched the words away, swallowing them before they could reach the house. Silence. Not even the rustle of trees. Not even the distant sounds of the town I had left behind. Just the door, rocking gently back and forth. The front door hung open, its rusted hinges groaning softly in the wind. The house was waiting. I climbed the sagging porch stairs, each step moaning under my weight, and nudged the door wider with my boot. The moment I stepped inside, the air changed. It was colder, unnaturally so. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones, that doesn't belong inside a house, even in a storm. And the smell, sweet, rotting, metallic. My flashlight swept over the entryway, and my stomach clenched. Carnival decor. The walls were draped in peeling, faded wallpaper depicting grinning clowns with soulless eyes. Strings of dusty, multicolored lights hung limp from the ceiling, their bulbs long dead. Broken porcelain masks littered the floor, their hollow eyes staring blankly up at me. And then I saw the rug. Dark, sticky. The beam of my flashlight caught something glinting among the stains. Teeth, scattered across the rug like breadcrumbs. Small, human, pristine, except for the ones that still had fragments of dried gum attached. A cold wave of nausea rose in my throat. This wasn't a prank. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around and leave, but protocol wouldn't let me. I had to clear the house. I stepped back outside, sucked in a deep breath of freezing air, and went straight to my cruiser. If I was going back into that house, I wasn't going unarmed. I popped the trunk, grabbed the shotgun, and slung the strap over my shoulder. The familiar weight steadied me. Flashlight clipped beneath the barrel. I re-entered the house, every step deliberate. The floorboards groaned beneath my boots, the only sound in the suffocating silence. Room by room, I cleared the downstairs, and with each room, the nightmare deepened. The dining room was worse than the entryway. A long, dust-coated table was set for a feast. The plates were filled with rotting food, swarming with black mold. But what made my breath hitch were the garnishes. More teeth, lining the plates like macabre decorations. The kitchen was no better. The rickety table was piled with food long past decay, covered in carnival tickets, the kind you'd win at a fair, spilling onto the floor like confetti. Then I heard it. Footsteps, outside, crunching in the snow. The wind howled through the broken windows, but beneath it, yes, there it was. Deliberate, slow, someone walking just beyond the porch. I moved toward a window, shotgun ready, but the swirling snow made it impossible to see. I swallowed hard, my breath clouding in front of me. Maybe it was a squatter, some deranged lunatic obsessed with the missing family, keeping the legend alive by staging this nightmare. That thought was unsettling, but at least it was rational. Then I heard the second set of footsteps. Above me, the floorboards creaked, the sound of slow, deliberate pacing directly overhead. I turned toward the staircase, every nerve in my body on high alert. My flashlight cut through the dark, illuminating the dust-covered stairs. Except the dust wasn't undisturbed. Fresh footprints, leading up. I took a breath, steeled myself, and climbed. Each step groaned under my weight. The hallway at the top was lined with portraits. Grotesque, masked figures, their faces disturbingly human yet off. Their painted grins stretched too wide, their eyes too dark. The glass in the frames was cracked, as if something had struck them. Carnival tickets littered the floor, torn and scattered. Then I saw the door, the primary bedroom, open. I stepped inside. The flashlight beam swept over the bed. Blood, soaking the sheets, the pillows, the mattress, dark, dried, and crusted over. And the teeth, scattered across the bed, gleaming like tiny bones. I felt it before I saw it. Presence, heavy. A shadow shifted in the farthest corner of the room. And then it moved. Then I saw it. A figure peeled itself from the shadows, its movements unnatural, jerky, like a puppet whose strings had been cut and hastily retied. It wore a rabbit mascot costume, or at least something that resembled one. The fur was thick with grime, matted in dark, crusted stains. The thing's clown-like face stretched into a grin that was too real. Its jagged teeth too large, too sharp, protruding like they had been forced into a mouth that wasn't meant for them. And its eyes, they weren't glassy, soulless mascot eyes. They were alive, watching me. In its oversized hand, it gripped a butcher's knife, the kind you'd see at a carnival stand, cutting slabs of meat. The blade gleamed, untouched by the decay on its costume. My grip tightened on the shotgun. "Don't move." My voice wavered. It didn't obey. 1 second, it was at the far end of the room. The next, it was inches from me, its breath hot and wrong against my skin. I pulled the trigger. The shotgun roared, the blast tearing into its chest, shredding fur and whatever lay beneath. It staggered but didn't stop. Instead, it laughed, a shrill, piercing sound that made my vision swim. Its grotesque grin stretched wider, impossibly wide, its lips splitting at the edges like tearing fabric. Before I could react, it lunged. It hit me with inhuman strength, slamming me against the wall so hard the breath left my lungs. My pistol jostled loose in its holster. The knife flashed. Pain exploded across my stomach. The warmth of my own blood spread through my uniform as I gasped, my fingers scrambling for my gun. But the thing wasn't done. It leaned in, its massive, fur-covered hand reaching for the wound, as if it wanted to dig inside. My body acted before my mind. I grabbed the pistol and fired. The first shot hit it in the chest, the second in the shoulder. It screeched, not in pain but in rage. I fired again, and again. Then we fell. The staircase blurred as we tumbled down, crashing against each step in a violent, twisting descent. My shotgun clattered away, lost somewhere in the chaos. My body hit the floor hard, but the thing landed first. I scrambled onto my elbows, my vision swimming, just in time to see it twist its own head at an impossible angle, its mouth slamming shut with a sickening crunch. That's when I saw the truth. It wasn't a costume. The fabric of its body moved. It pulsed, stretched, shifting like something was crawling beneath the surface. Seams split. Flesh broke through. Teeth, too many teeth, pressed against its sagging face, ripping through the fabric like they were growing out of it. My stomach lurched. The thing shuddered, its knife still clutched in its massive fingers. It was getting back up. I needed to move. My shotgun lay a few feet away, but my hand, the knife had cut deep. Blood dripped onto the wooden floorboards as I forced myself forward. I reached for the shotgun. The thing turned its head toward me, smiled, and then it lunged. I bolted for the door. Pain shot through my body with every movement, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I ran. The freezing air hit me like a wall as I burst outside. I didn't stop running until I reached the cruiser, blood dripping from my wounds, my uniform soaked. I locked the doors and sped away, the blizzard swallowing the house behind me. I didn't even notice the black envelope on the passenger seat. Not until days later, when I was discharged from the hospital. My supervisor handed it to me with a puzzled look. "This was in your car," he said, oblivious to the ordeal I hadn't reported. I hadn't seen it earlier. My heart sank as I opened it, revealing a single note in neat handwriting. "You should always check the back seat." I quit the next day, but I'm sharing this to warn anyone near Nebraska. If you ever hear about the Landon family estate, stay away. Looking back, the worst part wasn't the mascot or the house. It was realizing that every step I took inside had been carefully orchestrated. The masquerade details, the teeth, the blood, it wasn't random. Something had led me through that house, guiding me like a puppet on strings. The house at is real. The thing inside it is real. And whatever left that note in my cruiser, it's still out there. If you're ever near Nebraska, don't stop. Don't go near the house. And for the love of God, always check the back seat. I was 10 when the Carnival came to town. It wasn't anything fancy, just a traveling fairground set up in a dusty lot at the edge of the city. Rides that groaned with rust, flashing lights that flickered unpredictably, and workers who looked like they hadn't slept in years. My parents took me and my little sister, Sophie, as a rare treat. I remember the sticky sweet smell of cotton candy, the dizzying swirl of carousel music, the laughter of children echoing through the night. But most of all, I remember him, the clown. He wasn't like the others. Most of the carnival clowns juggled, made balloon animals, danced for the crowd. He stood near the entrance to the funhouse, just outside the reach of the glowing marquee lights. His costume was tattered, the fabric stained with something dark. His face paint was cracked, peeling like old wallpaper, revealing glimpses of grayish skin beneath. And his smile, the stretch too wide, far past where a human mouth should end. At first, I thought he was just another performer, maybe part of a haunted attraction. But something about the way he stood, motionless, watching, made my stomach twist. I tugged at my mom's sleeve. "Who's that?" She followed my gaze, frowning. "Who's who, honey?" I turned back. He was gone. I didn't think about him again until last week. It had been 20 years since that night, and the memory had faded, blurred at the edges like an old photograph. I was back in my hometown for work, and while flipping through some old storage boxes in my childhood home, I found a stack of family photos. One in particular caught my eye. Me and Sophie, standing in front of the Ferris wheel, grinning at the camera, our faces lit up with excitement. But there was something in the background, just beyond the funhouse. A figure, too tall, too still, grinning. My breath hitched. My hands trembled as I brought the photo closer. It was him. Same tattered costume, same peeling paint, same impossible smile. Only now I noticed something else. He wasn't standing still. He was closer than I remembered, like he had been moving toward us. I dropped the photo, my heart pounding. That night I barely slept. Every shadow in my room felt too long. Every creak of the house sent chills up my spine. I told myself it was just my imagination, just childhood paranoia bubbling back to the surface. Until the next morning, when I opened my front door and saw a single balloon tied to my mailbox,